Hey everyone, welcome to Flavor Talk with the Barbecue Pro Shop Factory team. I'm co host Brian Neal, aka Mr. Freak of Smoke Freaks Barbecue.
And I'm Ann Neal, Ms. Freak, and together we're the tongues and testers of the Barbecue Pro Shop Factory Team Flavor Guide, the world's first online seasonings decoder for barbecue and grilling seasonings. And joining us is our partner in flavor going all the way back to 2019, Mr. Jeff Belmonte, owner of Barbecue Pro Shop. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, everybody. Good to see everyone tonight. Thanks for all being here.
And tonight we have two very special guests who happen to be two of the biggest names in food sport, barbecue family, and SCA family. John Lindsey of All Queued Up and Ronald Burns of the Hotty Totty Steak and Barbecue Crew. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing
Oh,
good.
great.
Doing good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, good to be with you guys tonight. We've been looking forward to this.
Well, we are sure happy to have you guys as well. And for anyone listening out there who hasn't come across Ronald and John and their barbecue pursuits, well, as you're about to learn, these two guys have gone all in on barbecue, grilling, and competition, really to the point where they've basically built a whole life around it. Let's see, they both have their own seasoning and sauce lines. They've got collaboration seasonings they're doing with other folks out and about on the State Cook-Off Association trail, chasing championships every year since 2017. They're in on the content streaming game with their Arcasippy Smoke live show on Facebook, including my favorite installment, the weekly Ribeye Roundup, out teaching barbecue classes and spreading the barbecue gospel at events. And most recently, they are both featured very prominently on the first season of the hit cooking show Barbecue Country on the Country Network. And that one, I got to tell you, just wrapped up the first season a few days ago with some very big news. So maybe that's the topic we all ought to start on tonight. But for anyone who's listening, I should probably give a spoiler alert. If you're hooked on this series and you haven't watched the final edition of it yet this season, you might want to tune out for a few minutes because we got some big news. So guys, why don't we start with what's the whole premise of Barbecue Country Show? You know, I've seen a lot of these cooking shows, but this one's a little different. What's it all about?
Well, Barbecue Country set out to find the best backyard barbecue cook in America. This started out with just an idea a few years ago with Russ Lannon, and he really brought that to fruition this year. I think they had almost 400 auditions sent in for this series, and the rules were that you could not have competed on any other platform on a professional level where you were competing for money. They did not want a competition cook. They wanted your average Jane, your average Joe. And, you know, one of the things John Lindsey and I saw from the beginning, that they did their homework on that. No one slipped in under the curtain on this one. These 6 contestants that they brought together here were truly backyard cooks, and that's kind of how the show evolved around that. And John can tell you a little bit about the pit masters then.
Yeah, they selected, and I guess to the start of it, there was I guess a dozen of these backyard pit masters from all across the United States. And you know, one of the things Ronald and I have learned over the years is some of the best barbecue and grilling cooks in the world are in the backyard and have never won a contest or even been to one. I mean, these folks know what they're doing. They can put out food and they can do all the stuff that needs to be done. You know, I think there's a stigma out there anymore that if you never cooked a contest or never had a grand champion, you're just not worthy to be called a barbecue pit master. But there's nothing could be farther from the truth. But these backyard cooks went head to head, and I mentored a gentleman from Rusk, Texas, named Shorty Jackson, and Shorty was as good as anybody I've ever met on a grill. We just got along great. Ronald had Brittany Bojak from up in the Northeast. I think around the Baltimore area. She came in, and we built relationships with these folks that will last a lifetime. We count these folks our family. We love them, and this was just a great time. It was a lot of fellowship. Russell Lanham done a great job putting this thing together, and it wasn't scripted. This was pretty straight. A lot of your barbecue shows is pretty scripted, and you're set up. You're doing a setup of this or that. There wasn't any setups. It was just full bore. Of course, Mark Lambert was the host, and Peyton Aldridge, country music star from down in, I believe, Cleveland, Mississippi, down in that area. He was on The Voice. He was the co-host, and Russ Lanham done some moderating. So it was a great time, and I sure did enjoy it. And we hope there's some future opportunities to do some other things. I have no doubt that they're going to do more in the future.
So John and Ronald, real quick. So the premise of the show, and then let's get into your role and kind of how you guys both got involved.
Yeah, well, as John said, and I mistakenly said 6. So there was 12 that started out, 12 backyard cooks, and there were 12 pit masters from across the country that were paired with a backyard cook to serve as a mentor. We were there to help. We were there to assist. We were allowed to stay in the pits for an allotted amount of time, and then we were pulled out of the pits, and we could actually pull out a 3-minute save where we had a lodged cast iron skillet and a spoon that we could hit all the way back to the pit and have a 3-minute save.
Yeah. And
then in the finale, they allowed us to stay, in the pit the whole time. But it was in rounds. You went against 2, 2, 2, and 2. And then when you got down to the semifinals, obviously, then those 3 teams moved on to the finale.
So from what I gathered from the viewing that I've done, there were a series of different challenges. So maybe a 1-bite challenge or a requirement. I think in the episode that I saw, you got to cook everything on a tribal fire. So tell us about what some of those challenges were, and how much knowledge did you have in advance? You said it wasn't scripted, right? So how did that work?
Yeah.
Did you get to practice those things?
Well, you had a little bit of time to kind of figure out roundabout what you were going to be cooking, but you never really knew for sure exactly what they were going to throw at you. And I know we had Yoder Smokers was a sponsor of this, so we had a Yoder pellet grill, which is second to none. We had that new Yoder, one of the Yoder flat. Well, I say a flat grill, but it was just a grill that is, outstanding, charcoal. And then you had this tribal fire. And so you could cook on any of these for any of these different cooking events during the show. Most of the time during the show, you had a protein, then you had to bring some sides that they didn't give you everything about it, but they gave you just enough to know that, hey, bring you some sides, and then you can make, we tried to bring sides in and ingredients into the show that we knew would work with just about anything. Like we brought, they didn't have grill grates, so we brought our grill grates to come and cook on. We knew steak would be a part of this thing somewhere, or some sort of grilling. We brought our grill grate, and other little things that we could bring in. There were some of these that you had to use certain seasonings, and I know we had a challenge or two. We had to use some of the sweet swine of mine seasoning, and which is a great one to use, and real balanced, and just different proteins with sides. And it ended up in the finale where we had a cowboy cut ribeye. It had the dino bone on it, and a tomahawk. We had a 3.5-pound lobster tail to cook and I'm telling you, when they pulled those out, wow. Get Maine lobster. And then we had to create sides around that. And through that finale, we had a 1-bite challenge in there to figure out who got to select what order they turned in. So it was a grueling task, but it was fun. And I felt like Russ and those that put this thing together did a great job of challenging the cooks.
So is it like SCA where you get to do a practice cook before you're turning in the judges, or did you guys and your partners, your backyard cooks, just have one shot at it?
Yeah, we basically had one shot at it. For instance, Brittany and I, our first challenge was a 10-bone rack of pork, Cheshire pork. We smoked that. We cut it in half, smoked it, injected it, of course, seasoned it. And then at the end, we cut it up in chops, left the bone, and then we grilled it off on grill grates, sauced it, glazed it at the end. And the biggest thing that I helped Brittany through that process was making sure that we didn't overcook it. And that was, I think that was one of the winning philosophies that we had on that first one, that we definitely didn't overcook our pork. And it turned out really good.
Had she ever cooked anything like that before?
She had cooked chops before, obviously, but never, a 10-bone real pork loin. And so, she talked about, slicing it to begin with. And I said, well, let's get some smoke on it. Then let's grill it off the end. And I make sure to tell her what temperature we wanted it to finish at. We definitely didn't want it to go to 160, 170. We're going to pull that sucker off about 135, 138, somewhere in that vicinity. When it was still packed with juice and flavor and tender, not dry. And she executed it perfectly. As John said, we brought our own grill grates. We put those grill grates right on top of those charcoal grills, and we're able to grill off some beautiful pork chops, and which carried us through to the semifinal round.
So in terms of your mentorship, that you both were providing and the other pitmasters, I mean, I could just imagine so many different topics you could be focusing on: fire management, flavor, strategy with the judging. What did you focus on, or were there areas that were more important than others as you guys were filming?
Well, yourself in cooking, it's all got to come together. If you're going to be consistent, like some of the cooks out on the circuit, and like Ronald and I have tried to, it worked hard to be, it's not one thing. You can have a great flavor profile, but if you mess it up with fire management, you're done. And you can have a great fire management, but if you don't have the balanced flavors and the layerology, on your proteins, you're done again. So, and then you've got to hit doneness. You've got to know. So there's a facet of things that you have to deal with. So what I try to do is walk in first and evaluate what Shorty knew. I had a series of questions. I just simply asked him to figure out how his fire management was, talk to him about the seasonings. Took about 5 minutes before we started and just quizzed him, just to know exactly where he stood with each of these things. So there's a gamut of things there that you have to go through. So what I try to do is focus on we've all got weak points. So, I mean, we try to focus on his weak points and lift those up. And again, this wasn't about me or Ronald. The show was about the best backyard cook in America. So we were there to support also. And I think, and then the pit masters or the mentors had some, challenges themselves, like the 1-bite challenge there at the finale. The pit masters pretty much done that one. And then, I don't want to give a spoiler, but the show's over, so most people have watched it. So I will go into a few details here. Shorty and I got eliminated on the round that we went in. I don't know exactly if time, they took the mentors out, and time kind of played a factor in that and different things. So we were eliminated, but we had a chance going into the finale to go back in and win our way back in, cooking steaks, New York strips, Hassel Cattle Company. And one of the things that, thank God, that I did, me and Shorty made a decision that I was going to cook the steaks, and it could have been either me or him on that one challenge. And so he said, "You do what you do." And I feel like Shorty and I excelled on any of the steak cooking. That's where I felt like we were definitely in the top echelon in the steak part of this thing. And we ultimately lost this whole shooting match on, I feel like, a side dish. And Ronald will tell you more about that later, which was an awesome, those things are just as important as your others. If you're even on the other proteins and the different stuff, then the side dishes come into play. And I want to tell you, Ronald and Brittany had a side dish that was a warm baked potato salad that was absolutely lights out. And so it was like I said, the whole gamut comes into play: side dishes, proteins, fire management, the whole 9 yards. So it was kind of an all-around pitmaster competition, wouldn't you say, Ronald? I feel like it was very well rounded.
Sure. Yeah. I think it was well planned. All facets of it, like John said, it was not scripted. It was live TV. And the Pitmaster Challenge, we were confined to use the Tribal Fire Grill, which I had seen those before. I'd never cooked on one before, but, I treated it basically as a griddle. We had Kanekawa sausage from down in South Alabama. We had bacon. I kept bacon in our cooler because, anytime you can use bacon, it's a plus. So, I thought, hey, slice these things up, wrap them in bacon, season them, dip them in barbecue sauce. So I tried to go simple, and I won the semifinal Pitmaster Challenge, which allowed me to go back in the pit and spend time with Brittany. And then Fergie and I tied on the finale. And I lost on a coin toss, and he chose to go first. And then, of course, he chose us to go last. But we had some strategies there. We knew we were going last, so we had some strategies that hopefully definitely paid off in the end.
So we've been watching this show play out over, I'd say, gosh, probably 4 months now on the Country Network, or we watch it on YouTube ourselves. We don't get the Country Network, but we posted the YouTube link up there for anybody who wants to check out the episode so far. So for those of us watching, this season has played out over a period of months. I'm wondering, though, behind the scenes, like, how did all this get done? Was this like a day or two, or were you guys going back there every week to do a new episode?
Well, we had the first section of it to the finals in about 3 days, I think, 3 or 4 days over the course, of filming. And then we had to go back, and Ronald, you correct me if I'm wrong, we had to go back and film the finals and the finale. And at the finale, after this thing was over with, no one knew who won it. We all videoed a winning, calling our name and everything, just good for TV. But nobody knew up until, I think, we didn't know until the night of. I went down with Ronald, and we had a watch party, but even the producers and all of these folks had these in sealed envelopes in a safe until the editing process, which was a week before. So we didn't know who won it, but it was over the course of about 3 days, the first round, and we come back about 2 days the next round.
So I'm trying to build a picture in my mind of what those 3 or 4 days must have been like trying to film all of these episodes. I mean, there was a whole ton of cooking packed into that period of time. I've gathered that you only had a vague idea rolling into town of what you were going to be doing over those few days. So what was all that like? I mean, what kind of command center did you bring with you? And, how long are you at it every day trying to get these done?
Well, we actually filmed it. They filmed the whole first round from Monday through Friday. There was 2 sessions per day, one at 9 and then one at 12:30. They give you 2 hours, to compete or to complete the challenge. And I've actually filmed. I got there on Tuesday morning. I think I filmed Wednesday morning. It was cold. It was raining. It was in April. And then when we made it to the semifinals, which would have been Friday, we filmed Friday. So I didn't come back home, because if I'd come back home, I just had to turn around and go back. So basically there was 9 episodes that was filmed Monday through Friday. And then we all came back to Lebanon, Tennessee, there at Fiddler's Grove, and filmed the finale in June. And that was basically on a Saturday. They did the 1 bite challenge. We had a VIP experience party and a meal on Friday night. And then we filmed the finale on Saturday, which was not released probably, I guess, till last August, 1st of September, maybe July. Well, it was in July, I guess. Started in last of July, maybe, and it came on, every 2 weeks until October the 4th was when the finale was set to air. But because of editing purposes and making it a better show, they put that off to the 11th, and I think that was a wise decision. They did a really good job with that. So. All facets of this was just a heck of an experience for me. And it was especially nice to get to meet Brittany, my my backyard cook. And I call her a pit master now because I think she has graduated. So it was a super fun experience. They did a really good job. It was not your typical, professional cooking atmosphere. And I think that's what drew a lot of people to the show, that the backyard cook outnumbers us competition cooks probably 10,000 to 1. So getting to see people on the show that, hey, you know what, I could do that. And I think that's what it's all about. We have to figure out ways to get people involved in backyard cooking that are not, because if we don't, that's something we're going to lose, something that we love the passion for.
Amen, brother. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the background for both of you guys that got you to the point where you're invited to be on something like Barbecue Country. I mean, obviously, for those 12 pit masters that they paired up with those home cooks and backyard cooks, they didn't pick just anybody. So how'd you all get to be somebody in the world of barbecue? Where'd you start, and what was a little bit of your journey to this point?
Well, I say it's been a lot of hard work and a lot of shoe leather is exactly what it took. Everybody's looking for an easy road. They're looking for the opportunity to start on top, and I never did want that. Wasn't something I wanted to do. I started cooking barbecue somewhere around 2014, and cooked barbecue on the KCBS circuit for 3 years. And 2017, I was at a barbecue competition in Whitehall, Arkansas, and they had a steak contest attached to it. And so we cooked the steak, just watching a video. We didn't know what a competition steak ought to even look like. I didn't even have mine tied up. I didn't know anything about tying one or anything like that. But I thought I knew how to cook a good steak, and we brought our Weber grill for that one and cooked it. It was the last turn in of the night after all the other stuff had been turned in, and turned it in and won first place. And I had no idea, but that was the last cook, is the last chance effort to get in the 2017 World Championship, which was held in, I believe, October or November before they changed it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was the week before. So you had the heaviest hitters, the biggest names, and the biggest cooks there. So I come in and we win this thing. And, it was a $2,500 payout that night. And I've still got the picture with money in my hand. And, I look at that and I was just in shock. We didn't do that well in the barbecue. That we thought we had great stuff, but the steak. So after 2017, we managed to, me and John Walter, my son, turned around, and within a week we were in Dallas cooking the World Championship. Of course, we didn't do very well down there because we didn't even know what, we were just trying to learn. And you have to, yourself, competition is just different than backyard where you're cooking steak or whatever. So we got started, and we started cooking lots of contests. When I was in KCBS and cooking barbecue, 12, 13, 14 contests a year, about all we could do. And we did really well. We just couldn't do enough to make runs for team of the year or anything like that. But when we got in the State Cook-Off Association, we started traveling and working it. And I think that first year I finished, 2018 was my first year for points. I believe finished number 4 in the world in points that year. That was our first year. Me and John Walter, my son, we traveled all over. And it started from there. I cooked 38 contests that year just to show how far it's come. I cooked 38 contests, was able to be in the top 4 in the nation in points. Last year, I cooked 78 and finished top 10. I think I was 9th. But I guess what I'm saying is the game has changed a lot. But we didn't know what we were trying to build. We just knew we were trying to pay our dues, that we felt like I made a decision coming into 2018 that we were going to build a brand with the SCA. Ronald and I have had the privilege of being the ambassadors of the year for the SCA. I've qualified for the World Championship 7 times. I think finished in the top 10 in the world 5, and the other 2 I was in the top 20. So, it's been a great blessing, and but we just got out on the road and worked, and I cannot tell you how many miles and how many hours and I sure can't tell you how much money we spent trying to build this brand. You can't do it without hard work. I felt like I had to pay those dues to be able to get to where I'm at. And
So,
I
John,
didn't want anybody to give me anything. I just wanted to pay my dues and move.
John, what was your attraction coming into barbecue food sport? Were you all about barbecue before you started competing, or was it more about
No,
like to compete and barbecue was something you knew how to do?
I'm like a lot of these folks. I started watching barbecue pitmasters on TV, and that's how I started. I thought, man, I can do that. And I loved it. And, it's so funny because I wouldn't miss a barbecue show if it was on television. And then when I started having the opportunity, I always had jobs I couldn't go do it. I couldn't cook on the weekends.
Yeah. So,
And then
Ronald, how about you? How did you get into this whole thing, Ronald? And how did you get to know John?
Well, my journey started a little bit different. Back in 2009, I had a 13-year-old son and a 19-year-old son that came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, let's do this competition barbecue thing." We cooked at home. I grew up cooking, at home and grilling and whatever. But, my first, I guess, reply to that was, boys, I just don't know if I've got time to do that or not. And then it dawned on me that if my 13-year-old and my 19-year-old wanted to spend time with me on the weekends, I better do it. So we formed the Hotty Totty barbecue crew around 2009. We cooked the KCBS and MBN circuits, mainly KCBS, for probably the next 8 years. And, I had a lot of friends of mine that said, "Hey, let's go try this State Cook-Off Association thing." And I was like, "Hey, I cook steaks at home. I'm a barbecue guy." And so I finally broke down, went to my first SCA event, and I was hooked. I'm like, man, I can cook 10 of these for what it costs me to cook one barbecue contest. And so, the rest is history. We started developing one seasoning at a kind of a time. We went along there for a while. And then when we hit the SCA we really started looking hard into seasonings and why we would want to introduce a new seasoning and so forth and so on. And we can talk about that later. But, we were at the shed the second year that they had the shed when there were almost 200 contestants in that. And I won one of those contests, and just so happened one of my newest seasonings had just hit the market. And that particular night, Brian Caruso won steak A, I won steak B, and we both used my seasonings, which I had orders coming into me by Sunday afternoon on my way home. John and I met actually at that contest. We had cooked KCBS against each other for years and never met. And we met at the shed that night, got to talking about, hey, let's do some videos together. We started out trying to get that planned. COVID hits. And then we decide, you know what, there's nowhere you can cook right now. Let's do a Facebook Live show and just keep the fire burning. And that's what we did. I was in a hotel room in Little Rock because I was working in that area at that time. And we were on Monday nights. We started that Arkansas Smoke Live, and I guess the rest is history. And now, my wife she never really got into the barbecue thing, but now my wife cooks along beside me. My two sons cook. One of my daughter-in-laws have cooked ancillary and steak and got gold tickets. And we kind of counted up the other night between our family since 2017, we probably have 25 plus wins on the SCA circuit. So having your family there is the biggest thing to me. My wife travels with me now. She's leading the Mississippi State points right now in the SCA. So I'm really proud of her. She's won 4 contests this year. And that's the blessing to me that's really came from this, that we kind of approach that from a family. We have some good family fun competition. And, so that's kind of how it came by for me.
So at this point, sorry, go ahead, Ms. Freak.
Do you and your wife have a rivalry? Mr. Freak and I, we keep score.
we don't keep score, but I laughed about 2 weeks ago. She was saying, I'm leading the Mississippi points. Of course, I won the Mississippi State points last year in SCA, and she said, I'm leading those points, and she had forgotten about my points that I had just received for the second and third that I had for that weekend. And she was talking about the guy that was right on her heels. And I said, I don't think that's the guy you got to worry about. So that's kind of our friendly competition right now, is kind of the Mississippi State.
Yeah.
But she knows behind the scenes, she knows I'm more proud for her to win than me. I acted a fool the first time she won an SCA contest in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yes, sir.
I'm telling you, she just said, I was going live, and when they called her ticket and she jumped up, I forgot about going live. The phone was like going everywhere. You go back and watch it. It was so hilarious. I was yelling at the top of my lungs, and I'd rather her or my boys or my family win than me. That's an enjoyable experience to me.
So is the whole crew going to go down to Worlds in Fort Worth next March? The whole Hotty Totty crew? Are you all in it?
Yeah, I think we're all in it now. I was the last one to get the gold ticket. I only got it a few weeks ago. I've been snake bit with 49s this year. I went back and looked. I had 10 contests that I lost for first place by less than 0.5 of a point. And it was all because of a 49. I'd had the highest taste score, and I'd get a 49 in doneness, or I'd get a 49 in texture, the rest 50s. And, that's been my year. All year I've been snake bit with 49s, but you know what, like I said, my wife has won a contest, my sons, and hey, that's all that matters to me. I'm happy for them, happy for us to be able to have fun. Now our grandkids are cooking some of the kids events. And, like I said before, guys, and we talked about this last weekend when we were in Pensacola, my grandkids, they know about running through McDonald's or running through Burger King or running through. And if we don't get these kids involved, this passion for this sport that we love is gone. We are one generation away from extinction. If you think about it. And I think food sport really definitely needs to step up. Of course, Melissa Cookston's doing a deal for kids this weekend. I think we need to get behind things like that all over the country. And I know there's some high school leagues that's popped up in Texas, which is great. There's kids that can't compete in football, basketball, soccer, the band, but there's kids that loves to be in the outdoors and cook. We need to promote that all we can.
Yeah, and it really one of the things I've always enjoyed the most about it is just seeing little kids grow up out on the barbecue circuit or the cooking circuit. And at first they're just little kids on their bikes with training wheels, and then sometimes they get to be 12, 13, they're entering contests, and a lot of them do awful well just because they've been watching their folks for so long and know what it takes to put it all together and pull it off. It's so cool to see.
Watching them grow into their small nitrile gloves, over the course of a few years. That's fun.
The
future. Well said.
So let's get into a bit of flavor and flavor development, because gosh, I think between the two of you, you got over a dozen popular seasonings out on the market just for barbecue and grilling. And then you've got some brines, some sauces, all of that. What I'd really like to start with from both of you is just, especially for people who maybe have designs on doing this themselves, how do you even go about the process of bringing a product like you have done to market?
Well, the first step is, the thing about it is anymore, of course, we live in a free country and anybody can do anything they want to do. But just from my perspective, I would have never put any kind of seasoning or product out unless it was tried and unless I had paid my dues. And so that was a part of all those years of working and running. Everybody's got a seasoning. You have to have something that's going to set you apart. And those credentials are very important. So, if I was going to tell anybody to do anything, and this may be just a little bit different than the question you asked, but it's the start of everything. You need some credentials. You need something that is tried and true, and you need to, I feel like you need to pay your dues. That's the first step. Now people put out great products all the time, but I just think it helps you to get a little bit more involved once you have some dues paid. Then after you get that, you've selected some flavors that you may have put a rub together at home that you're using for, your ribs or your chicken or on your barbecue trail, whatever you're doing, or it's in your backyard. You're somewhere down the line, you're going to have a good co-packer, and they can help you so much. Your seasonings that you've built that seasoning blend with at home is not going to be what the co-packer has. So there will be some adjustment between your McCormick blends or whatever you've got here and you're building it at home to what the co-packer has. The co-packer is going to have a fresher product. It's going to be a bulk product. It's going to be a higher quality product. And sometimes, you may have a teaspoon of this type of garlic, granulated garlic, and versus what they've got, it's it's different potency and everything else. So it's going to take you a little bit to work through that. But if you've got a good one, and ours is Townsend Spice and Supply. Ronald and I both have been with Shane Lynn and Lawson Lynn for the last, since the existence on mine. And I'm going to tell you, they have done a fabulous job helping me with products and helping me get everything together. You'll have to have UPC codes. You'll have to have your labels, a good graphic design. A lot of it goes into it, but a good co-packer can help you with all that when you get started. That would be the first steps that I know of. Ronald, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you froze up there. There's all these practical things that you got to consider when it comes to, your labels and your bottles and who's going to make it. Ronald, how about the thing it all starts with, the recipes themselves? What inspires those for you? And kind of, did you have a target in mind when you set out to make some of these rubs you've got out in the Hotty Toddy line?
Yeah, I'll give you a prime example. And the answer to that question is yes. We have never introduced a seasoning that just because to come out with another seasoning. There was always an end result in mind. I started out with my Climax AP with I wanted something a little bit different. I wanted a balance of flavor that you tasted all of the seasonings at once, not one over the other, not salt first, not pepper last. I wanted you to be able to taste all of it at the same time. And I wanted to add a little bit of butter powder to that. And so I started working on that in about May, I guess, of 17, maybe, or yeah, I guess maybe 17. And the co-packer just could not, the one before Townsend just could not come up with a blend because I'd taste it, you taste salt first. I taste it, you taste garlic first. I taste it, you taste pepper first. And so I went through probably 10 samples and then we came down, I just stopped it. I said, okay, if you can't do it, I'll just forget it. And I picked it back up in September and it finally came back to me with 3 samples. I carried them actually to deer camp with me. We cooked everything with it that week. And I actually settled on one. And then, in January, we brought it to the public and the rest is history. But all the seasons we put out, we didn't just put them out to put them out. They're all different. They blend really well together. But moreover, guys, I'll tell you my take on this whole thing. One of the things that we've always tried to do is we've tried to pride ourselves on doing the right thing. And, and Jeff, you can attest to this too. You can look down your shelves and most all of the seasonings there have the same ingredients in some shape, form, or fashion. But, there is in building a brand, it's not about just what's in the bottle. It's kind of what's in here in the man that put it out,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we always try to pride ourselves on is doing the right thing. And I think that helps you more with the following of folks that uses your products more than exactly what's in the bottle. Now, I will say what we have in the bottle, we're very proud of. John and I both have some new ones coming out. We can't wait for Mr. and Miss Freak to put the flavor guide on those, and they'll be coming out pretty soon. And we've worked long and hard on those, and they are specific flavors that will complement any of the rubs that we have.
So when you're heading to, bring something to a co-packer and you want them to develop something, do you guys typically already have a prototype that you've built at home out of whatever you have access to?
Yeah, just like John said, though, most of the time there's a compromise that's involved because, what I do, I'd go to Walmart or the grocery store and gather up all these seasonings that I want. But, it may not be the same brand of pepper that he's got. It may not be the same brand of garlic that he's got. So there has to be a trial. I mean, typically they'll send you samples and say, what about this one? And I'd say, we need to back off on the salt just a little bit. And then we go through that process till we settle on on a recipe. And then actually they'll make a batch of samples because just a small bit, and then you're making a larger amount could be a little bit different. So he always goes through and makes us a sample batch to test. And we've already been through that with our newest one that's coming out. So it's about a 4 or 5 stage process before that bottle hits, the counter or the shelf, if you will. So you don't just wake up and say, hey, here's the recipe I want to do it, bottle it, and it's done. But it's not that easy.
Such an important point about an ingredient, this brand of black pepper or mesh versus, something else can really throw the whole blend in a different direction. And, Mr. Freak and I in our flavor testing, when a blend is maybe reformulated or an ingredient is swapped out or something, we, really retest those because we know that so much, can change as a result of that process. You guys talked about, and Ronald, you mentioned, the new blends that you have coming are, ready to test and get out there. What does that testing look like? How do you go about that before you kind of finalize this is the formula?
Well, we like to get it in the hands of our our friends, our competitors, and we've done that with ours, and it's been tested on the competition trail, done very well. We've tested it at home. We've tested it with folks that we really trust their opinion, that they'll tell us, you know what, I don't really like this blend, and that's what we need to hear. I mean, I may like it and someone may not, and that you're not trying to please everybody, but you're trying to get that, trying to strike that balance. And we feel like with all of ours that we have struck that balance, and it didn't just come up, overnight.
When you're doing these rubs, you've got to figure out what your end game is. Ronald and I both have rubs that we would classify as a base rub. Like on my end, maybe a State Line Bold. It's going to have some heavier salts in it. The Steak Shake, good base rub. Then we have, and Ronald's got like his Climax.
Yeah.
I would consider it a base rub. Even his most underrated rub he has is 38 Special, and it's as good a rub as he's ever put out, but it's probably as underrated as anything. But it's a definite base layer. Then we have those base rubs. Then we have enhancers that go on top. To the point of we're putting 6 and 7 rubs on a steak, and I've heard people that are cooking. And of course, I've cooked with you guys, and kind of how I do it. And you guys layer your flavors too. I've had some top competitors say, forget this layering thing. We put them all in the bag and shake them up and put them on. That's what works for you. But Ronald and I found out a long time ago that don't work for us. We'd rather dial in some nuances of flavors, and with the layerology method, we can do that. And in our development, we're trying to figure out: are we going to try to create another base rub, or are we doing an enhancement rub? And what's the purpose? So we answer those first. A base rub is going to have more salt. It's going to be a more heavy salt, pepper, garlic, onion base on it. Your enhancement rubs are good. You put 3 salty rubs on a piece of meat, and you've got a salt lick. If I were to take State Line Bold, Steak Shake, and bovine and layer them on a steak with medium coats, you're going to be really salty. That's just part of it, because the salt's the first ingredient. So the difference between your base rubs is, I feel like number one is your salt, but I think you need in a good base layer, you're going to need a good solid salt, pepper, garlic, onion. You can take that and do anything you want to with it, but where the nuances of flavors come in is when you introduce the sweet chipotle, when you introduce your grilling thyme, when with a little grill flavor on the backside, and layer those in layers, and you pick up those nuances of flavors. Layering them not at one time. Sometimes we layer them at 3 different times in the cook. If we're cooking barbecue ribs, I'm putting 6 or 7 rubs on, but at about 3 different times. I feel like it gives us an advantage. It's been proven on the circuit, and Ronald and I, our philosophy, the day that guy walked into my life was one of the greatest blessings in the world. Him and his family is just, they're like my family, but we had the same philosophy, and the same morals, the same values, the same philosophy, and even on cooking. And so he got the layerology, and that's the method we've used, and that starts in our development process.
So and the whole concept of layerology, for those who aren't familiar with it, it really is about putting different layers of seasonings on, and sometimes even at different times in the preparation or cooking process. What are some of your guys' favorite layering tips that would help out, home cooks, people who are doing things either on the stovetop or on the grill at home? Like, what's a simple way to start employing this concept of layerology?
Well, one of the things is that you know the seasonings that you like and the flavor that you want your protein to taste like, and you incorporate 3 different rubs, and I'll give you a perfect example. You could take John's Steak Shake, my Climax, and my bovine, and do that in that order, and you're going to get one flavor. Okay. You can reverse that, use the same rubs, but layer them differently, and you're going to get a completely different taste. And that's the beauty of this thing, is that, layerology allows you to change those layers around to achieve the taste that you want. And we have proven that over and over and over again that, I may go in, and right now with my flavor profiles on steak, Climax is the first thing that hits my steak, because I know by letting it set for 10, 15 minutes, maybe, to caramelize and work in, that it's different if I just start putting Climax on and then put, grilling time, then put bovine. It's a totally different taste if you don't allow that base rub to work in your meat before you start your next layer. And the same thing I do on ribs. I let my Climax work in before I put anything else, whether it's John's Sweet Thing, whether it's my rib rub, whether it's my new, sweet chipotle that's coming out. I allow them to work in before I start with the next layer, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One of the things that I really appreciate about both of your seasoning lines is the flexibility and ability to work with different products. Between your 2 lines, a lot of them pair really nicely together. And I know that I really had this pork loin that was just super boring, and I wanted to wake it up, and I used State Line Bold and paired that with, I think it was JDQ Sweet. So, other brands and other, products. So there's, just a lot of potential that exists when you have the flexibility of lines like the ones that you've brought to market.
And, that's one of the things that we've always kind of prided ourselves on. We realize we're not the only guys out here that's got seasoning. Okay. And that's one of the things was one of our staples with our team, Mississippi. We did not mandate that they use only our seasonings. But we did ask them that if they've used another line of seasonings, at least ours were sitting along the side of it, and they're using it as well. But to your point, Ann, you're exactly right. You can take any of my rubs or John's and pair them well with any other that's out there on the market. And we did that exclusively for that reason. We're smart enough to know that people out there are not going to only use our products. And, but if there is something that they're looking for that the brand they're using doesn't have, then we want them to reach and get a bottle of ours and pair it with it. And that's our whole philosophy from the beginning. We did not want to mandate that our team use only ours. If they were used to using, Boar's Not Out or DB180 or Cosmos or whatever it might be, we wanted them to make sure that obviously they used ours as well. And I think that's a great philosophy to have.
So what is Team Mississippi exactly, and how does one become a member of that?
Well, we started out Team Mississippi several years ago just to really help us build our brand. And what it's done is that we have team members from coast to coast now, and it's become more like a family. I look on here, I see Caitlin Crane, I see Brennan Nielsen, they're not just teammates; they're my family,
Sure.
and that's what it's all about to us. And we've had this team now going on 3 years, I guess, coming up 4, and we have added some every year. What we want to do is find people with the same philosophy that we do. Number one, helping others. I think anyone on our team, if at any time somebody would reach out to them for help, they do it, because I think they see that in what John and I have done. We have never turned down anyone for helping. Helping others is what we like to pride ourselves in doing. We like to align ourselves with people that have the same philosophy. So we've never sent out applications. We've never had to. We have people reaching out to us every year saying, hey, how can I get on Team Arcsippy? And so we've kind of just built that from, we don't need an application process, because, people look and see how our team members conduct themselves, how they work together, how they play together, and say, hey, you know what? I want to be a part of that. I couldn't tell you how many emails and calls John and I have received in the last 2 years from people saying, you know what? I watch your team at contests. They're so closely knitted. And then how do we be a part of it? That's how we do it.
Well, I can personally attest to that sense of that spirit of helping and hospitality that you guys embodied. One of the few times I got to cook next to you was down there in Mississippi, and I'd never cooked that part of the world before. And you were often to help me out on some things I didn't even know to worry about. I think you had like a color light that you could use to match it up with what they had in the judging tent, so you could see what your steak was going to look like. I can't even wrap my head around some of those things. I'm just trying to get my steak done at the right time most of the time, so I can keep up with Ms. Freak. But it really, really is great to see that. And I think that's always one of the things that struck me about competition food sport is there's nobody there who wants to beat you on your worst day when everything's going wrong. They want to help you have your best day so they can beat you on your best day.
Exactly.
And that's really what it's all about.
That's
awesome.
what it's all about. Yep.
Well said, Brian.
Well, as we're hitting the home stretch here, what is coming up new and next for both of you guys? John, why don't you go first and tell us what's in the pipeline for all this cooking stuff you're doing these days?
Well, Ronald and I have a lot of things kind of planned. There's just different things we have coming up. As far as Arcsippy and Ronald and I, we just got back from a big, huge event, Pensacola Beach, Florida, with Innisfree Hotels. And that is going to be, I'm just going to tell you guys to be sure, we can't let all the information out of the bag, but I'm going to tell you, Innisfree Hotels is going to play a major, major, major part in food sport in the upcoming year. And Ronald and I have been so fortunate to be selected to come and be a part of that. And, I'm clearing my schedule next year for anything that Innisfree has. And that's going to be a major focus for me going into 2024. Also, I have a catering company now and a festival vending business. We have a rub business. We're still teaching classes. Ronald and I have a lot of demos we have planned, some cooking classes, and just a lot of different things that we've got coming up. I won't be competing as much on the circuits, but I will still be out there, and we've got plans to maybe put together an Arcsippy team and do some of that. Before I turn it back, I do want to say one thing about these flavors, just really quick, and I didn't get to reiterate a few minutes ago. Folks, balanced flavors win. Balanced flavor. It don't matter what brands. It doesn't matter what. If you can balance flavors, and that's why we're so stuck on this layerology. If you can balance it, it wins from coast to coast, Europe, New Zealand, Japan, wherever you want to go. Balanced flavors win. So remember that. And I can't reiterate that enough.
There's so much to that. Barbecue, we used to always say boring barbecue wins, but what boring really means is that there's nothing that's jumping out in a huge way to upset that balance. And
Sure.
I think you're right. No matter where in the world you go, that's what it's all about. And I think part of the journey of becoming a great cook, whether that's in the kitchen or in the backyard or in the competition world, is figuring out how to taste your food and know what it needs to achieve balance.
Yeah,
right.
That's one of the reasons that Ann and I created the flavor guide, was because with, hundreds and hundreds of different seasonings out there, a lot of us want to try all kinds of different things, but until you've opened that bottle and cooked with it a few different ways,
Yeah.
you have no idea what that balance is all about.
yeah,
No.
And we thought if we could come up with a tool that lets you put one thing next to another and have some idea of how they were going to play together, it would really help a lot of people to kind of hone in on what things they need to add to their seasoning arsenal.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're real excited about our sweet chipotle that's coming out. We've worked a long time on it. We're just waiting on the labels to get completed on that. It has placed on the KCBS circuit. It has it's been known to be used as a finishing dust on steak. It's won a first place rib. So we can't wait to get that new seasoning in your guys' hands for you to be honest with us and tell us what you think about it.
So tell me a little bit about sweetness in steak. A lot of folks at home never really think that sugar is an ingredient that belongs in steak or in beef at all. But yet you out in the competition world, I guarantee you're going to find some little bit of sugar in almost everyone's bill of goods. What's y'all's philosophy on sugar and beef?
Well, you have to be careful with it. You can't put it on there early because it'll burn. And, the reason I said kind of as a finishing dust, with that line, you've got a little bit of heat for pop. You got a little bit of sugar. It kind of blend, if you will, between those two is a very satisfying taste to your palate. And that's really what we're after with that. And we've used it on ribs. We've used it on chicken. We've used it on steak. We really wanted it to be something that you could use on any protein to strike that balance between a sweet and your typical chipotle type flavors, because it will kind of blend it out a little bit and just give you a pop instead of a burn, if you will.
So this one sounds firmly in the enhancer category of rubs, like John was talking about earlier. Not so much of a base rub with all that salt to help unspool your proteins, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Brian, you're a barbecue guy, and I'm sure you and Ann have ventured down to Texas and had some of that great Texas brisket somewhere down the line. You've probably been to the big names, Kreitz and Franklin's and all those others down there. When you go and you taste a brisket, even though it don't have any sugar on it, one thing you're going to get off of that brisket is sweet. And we call it a sugar cookie. And the fat renders to a certain level. The best brisket in the world's in Texas. And I'm not from Texas. I'm from the Mid-South. But I'm just telling you, to me, it's the ultimate. And you're going to taste a myriad of flavors there. You're going to taste the sweet. You're going to taste the salty and all that. What we try to do, and, people say, we don't want any sweet on steak. Well, you don't want it to be overbearing, but, we've even created rubs to work in to make that steak taste like that Texas sugar cookie, or that when you don't have a long cook to develop that, but you've got a layer here that you can add to that and give you a hint. So sweet and salty and, savory and all those things work together. So, my take on sweet is, no, you don't want anything overly sweet, but you definitely, even the best briskets in Texas, even if they don't have an ounce of sugar, they're going to be sweet from that smoke and from that fire and from that cooking for that period of time. To recreate that is awesome if you can, even with a seasoning on short cooks.
Yep.
Very cool. So how about you, John? You got anything new in the pipeline? Seasoning wise, John, you got anything new coming out in the pipeline?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, we're breaking up just a little. I do. I have some wild game products coming out. I have a wild game all-purpose that'll be out hopefully shortly, and then I have a wild game jerky seasoning that'll be out. Those are two areas that I feel like is wide open, and there's not a whole lot. And in my area, and this goes back to backyard cooks. You could have every competition cook in the world using your product and still not be as successful as if you got all your backyard cooks loving your products. Just ask Malcolm Reed about that; he'll tell you. But our seasonings, we've been working on that and been working with some hunters and some different sportsmen here to develop those flavors, and we've got some things that they're really liking, and we're gonna have those on the market fairly quickly, I hope, as the year comes to a close.
Very, very good. Well, you guys,
Exciting stuff. Yeah.
we are reaching that witching hour. Once the sound starts breaking up, it's time to wrap up.
Yeah, it's time to go. Yeah.
We're overloading the airwaves and the software.
Yeah.
So I want to thank all of you guys for joining us tonight, all the guests who watched us and who will watch us in the future when we're got it recorded and up on our various Facebook pages and YouTube channels. Ronald, John, always a pleasure to see you, whether virtually and in person. And can't wait for the next time we get to cook together. Sounds
Absolutely.
like it might not be till Texas.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
all
so
right,
much.
everyone. This is Barbecue Pro Shop Factory Team Flavor Talk signing out. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.